So let me tell you a little about Cape Coral, a little bit about its history. I'm very interested in history. I collect old stuff, you can probably see behind me, Titanic related. I collect Roman coins, old books, maps. So history to me is something I enjoy. Though there's not a lot of history to Cape Coral, but it's still somewhat interesting because it's relatively new. But let me just first outline what Cape Coral is. It's basically this area. If I follow around here, come back up through here, and go out that way. That is Cape Coral, that as you see on this map. It's actually the second largest city by landmass in the entire state of Florida. About 220,000 people live here right now. The one thing that makes it very different is, as I zoom in, is the canals. There is no other place on the planet that has as many canals as we do. Now Venice, Italy obviously has a lot of canals, but not the numbers that we have. We have about 400 miles of canals. About 100 miles of that I think is a salt water, and the remaining 300 is a landlocked freshwater. So the freshwater does not go anywhere, it doesn't go into the river, but the salt water does. If I zoom in right here, I'll show you where Cape Coral began. It basically began in this area right through here. This is known as the Yacht Club area. Cape Coral houses date from the late 1950s, 1959 through the 1960s, though there's a lot of new homes in here, there's a lot of new builds going on as well, and some of those older homes have been torn down as well. So this area has changed a lot over the years. But let me show you what Cape Coral actually looked like in the 1950s. This picture that you see right here is Cape Coral as a peninsula. And the Yacht Club area that we're looking at, I just showed you, was probably this area right here. Now obviously that's vastly different from what it is right now. In the 1950s there was two brothers known as the Rosen Brothers that saw an opportunity to develop Cape Coral. And there were some homesteaders at the time that lived here. They did cattle ranching, that sort of thing, and probably the Clusa Indians had lived in this area as well back in the 1800s. This area was just simply known as the other side of the river. Fort Myers was over on this side, but this is what Cape Coral looked like before anything was done with it. This is what it was all about. So there wasn't much trees, that sort of thing. And then if we go back in the early 1960s, I will show you some other pictures. This is taken around 1962. Right here you see the Cape Coral Pier in. This is the Yacht Club that you see right here. And you can see, so this is the Yacht Club, this is the pier obviously. Unfortunately the pier no longer exists. Hurricane Ian took that out. So where that stands right now, we're not quite sure. There is a redevelopment and process of the Yacht Club area. This is the beach, which is still there. You still have access to here, but this is called the Yacht Club. But this is about to go through major change in the next couple of years. But you see some of the houses here, like this over here is over on Dolphin Drive. This is Riverside over here. So the early homes that were built in the late 1950s, 1960s were in this area right here. And as it developed a little bit more, if I show you into slide number 3, this is some of the areas as well. So again, the Yacht Club, we can't see it, is back in here. This is going to be Dolphin Drive, this is going to be Coral, this is going to be Bayshore, and you can see this is Cape Coral Parkway on here. So these are all the direct access that goes out. And we're starting to see some of the areas up to Coronado starting to get developed. Cape Coral Parkway, or let's say this is Del Prado running through here, and Cape Coral Parkway is going to be right in this area right here. This is the Bimini Basin that you see. There's a big development going on right here. So this has obviously changed a lot, but that's what you would have seen in the 1960s. And I think it was in 1969, I got 64, I'm making some notes here. This is where we see the bridge going in. So you start to see that in this picture right here. And if I show you another one on number 4, you can see the bridge is in the process of being developed. So this is 1964. This is where the first bridge that goes in. This is a low one. The midpoint isn't going to pop up till some years later. By 1969 we actually have about 10,000 people living in Cape Coral, so that was quite a lot for it to expand that much within a 10-year period. I think Naples, it took some 90 years for it to get to 10,000 people from the time it was developed. This is another interesting one. This was an advertisement for homes. This was in 1965. Interesting to see at home they could build you for $12,000. Another one $15,000. And certain ones of these still do exist. These were built by the Gulf American Corporation. My home that I live in is built in the 1970s. So you still see homes from 1960s, 1970s in Cape Coral. Predominantly you identify those by a single car garage, that sort of thing. But if we go back to the map again itself, as you see right here, it's expanded a lot over the last 70 years or so. So what we find now is Cape Coral is divided into 4 quadrants. I'll go over those a little bit right here. We have what's called the southwest, the southeast, the northwest, and the northeast. The southeast is the older part of Cape Coral, southwest is newer, and then northeast is a combination of old and new, and northwest is basically brand whole lot newer. If you're going to the northwest part of Cape Coral, you'll find there's a whole lot more of vacant lots upon that area, and that area continues to develop, as all the Cape Coral does as well. The other thing too, predominantly in the northeast and northwest Cape Coral, particularly above Pine Island Road, although there are some exceptions to that, that is pretty much on well and septic. Now there is some big changeover going right now in the northeast section of the Cape, in which they're due to get the City Water and Sewer, which actually is having quite a significant impact. There's a big impact fee. It's over $30,000. It gets floated over a 20-year period. For about 20 years ago, that was $8,000 to $10,000, but it's gone up a lot. So let me just highlight to you on this map right now where the dividing line is that separates basically the west from the east. And there's a road that does that within Cape Coral. And it basically is this road right here. It's Santa Barbara. So if I run the whole length of this road, this divides, basically this becomes west, this side becomes east. So everything on this side is going to have an east address, anything on this side is going to have a west address. But then we have an additional one as well that identifies the northwest from the southwest. Now people often think, when you look at it, that probably the natural dividing line is going to be Pine Island Road, which is this road right here. So generally think anything above this area is going to be north, anything here is going to be south. Well, that's not the case. The dividing line is actually this road here. It's called Hancock Bridge Parkway. And if you run that all the way out and continue to run it, anything south of this is actually all going to be south. Everything north of this is going to be north. So this area right here, though it's north of Pine Island Road, is actually considered to be southwest. So I said this area here, which again is above Pine Island Road from Embers south, this has a southwest address. The other thing you have as well, which is kind of interesting, is that the higher the street numbers go, the closer you are to the river. So just give an example again right here, that if I, let me zoom this up. So if I zoom in on here, you see how what we've got right here starts with first, this goes second, this goes third, and then as I continue to go south, you'll find that those like 18th, 27th, 39th, they continue basically, we end up all the way down on 58th, which is this street right here. This basically is as furthest south as you can go by street number in Cape Coral. So anything that goes 1, 2, 3, 4 in the south sections is put you close to the river. Now it works in the opposite though when you go up into the northwest. So the way that works, if I go up on this map again, if, as I said, if we use Hancock Bridge as the line, I'll show you right here. So we take Hancock Bridge, run across here. Now these streets here we'll start with 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So what you'll notice that as you move up, you go 3, 14, 23rd, and these will keep going up as well. So again, if I go into what's called gated circle, the highest number I'm going to get in the northeast northwest section is northeast 44, which you can see right there. So this is northeast 44th lane. So that's as far as you can go in the northeast. If I go over and cross over to the northwest, you'll find that the highest that I can go there is again into northwest 48th. So if you have a north address and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, you're heading north. If it's a south address, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, you're heading south. So you can generally get an idea, particularly if you're looking at a southwest, southeast address, where your numbers are, where you're in relation to the river. The only thing that does confuse that further though, which complicates it some more, is we also have streets that go 1, 2, 3, 4 heading in the west direction, and also 1, 2, 3, 4 heading in the east direction. So you've got it where it goes in two different directions. So if I show you right here, again, if we take Santa Barbara as an idea, so I'll show you right. So I'll show you right here. So again, we just said Santa Barbara is a dividing line. Now these streets here are going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this way it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So not only do you have streets going 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 going east and west, you also have them going it north and south, which sounds really complicated. Which actually, when for example UPS sometimes delivers a parcel to your address, they'll often, not often, occasionally they'll do it to the wrong location. I'll give you an example of that right now. So let's take an example of this section right here. So if I zoom in on this, let's see if I can get an address. Okay, here we go. All right. So if we take a look at this address right here, okay. So this particular address is 512 Southeast 35th Terrace. So what's interesting is the very first number, the 5, tells us that this is in the area of Southeast 5th Place. So we know on that first number where Southeast 35th Terrace and Southeast 5th Place is where we'll find that address. So that's why we've got 3 numbers, but then we'll also have a 4-number system as well. So if I choose another one, let me go into this area here. Okay, let's use this one as an idea right here. So we now have an address that has 4 numbers. Like if we take this one, 1022 Southeast 36th Terrace. Now what these numbers are telling us is that 10th crosses here, okay, and if we go here, we see this starts 11, 11th crosses here, and if I go further down, 12th crosses here. So we know that 10th crosses Southeast 36th Terrace, so we know that this property is going to be in that location. So that's how we figure that out. So as I said, if I zoom in on this again, just to explain this, 11th crosses here, and we got 13th crosses here. So these will be 11, whatever, these will be 12, this will be 13th, and so on. So that's how you actually figure the way around in Cape Coral. So if I have an address, let's say 1216 Southeast 34th Terrace, I can actually look at where 12 crosses 34th, and I can generally get an idea where that location is. The only thing that may interfere with me getting that is the canals that might cross it. Because again, if you look at these canals that we have, like let's take for example Southeast 28th Terrace right here. Now this particular street runs the whole length of Cape Coral. However, we've got a canal with a road intersects there, another one here. So I can't basically just go on Southeast 28th Terrace and drive all the way across. I can't do that because the canals interfere with that. So I have to look at where a specific location is in relation to other areas. So Cape Coral can be a little bit on the complicated side. It can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes trying to figure out exactly where you are. So we've had occasionally where we had a year or two ago, I had a Spanish family knock at my door with party gifts, thinking they were going to have a party at my house, which would have been nice, but it was the wrong address. And I don't speak Spanish, and I had to explain to them it was the street behind me, and they apologized for that, but that just happened on occasion. So it can be somewhat confusing, but Cape Coral, as I said, is an interesting area. The other thing that's kind of interesting too is that it was kind of a bit of a land scam that the Rosen Brothers developed Cape Coral. That when people came down into here, and initially they were basically advertising to the military, is they would say we have, let's say, a lot from, let's say, $200 back in the 1960s. It's like, oh, I can buy a piece of land for $200. What they didn't tell you until you got here was actually you needed 2 lots to build on. So every Cape Coral lot has at least 2 lots. For example, a standard size lot is 80 feet wide by 125 feet deep. So you have, each lot will be 40 and 40 to make up that 80. So every property has at least 2 lots. Some will have triple, some may have 4, but what they've done is they've combined those lots together. So that's the way that works as well. So the other thing is certain areas of Cape Coral have different names. Like this area right here, just a little bit of history on that too. This area is called the Rose Garden. There was actually the Rosen Brothers, when they started building Cape Coral, there used to be actually an area where they had dolphin shows and that sort of thing, and there was roses here and a place you could visit and other things as well. And there's an old movie, if you can find it, you may well find it on YouTube. It's called The Fat Spy, that I think was made in the 1960s, and it's kind of a silly movie, but actually you can see what Cape Coral looked like in the 1960s, because it goes down some of the main streets, Cape Coral Parkway. It shows you where the Rose Garden was, where they used to have these little shows that went on, that sort of thing. Other interesting little fact as well is, if I zoom out on this again, that at one time Cape Coral Parkway, believe it or not, which is this street right here, actually was a landing strip. That when people came down to look at property in the area, they used to fly up in like a little Cessna plane. They would take off right off of this road right here. I think it was in this area here, and they fly them around, show them what the area looked like from the air, and then they sell them the property. But as I said, there are actually 2 books you can read about the history of Cape Coral. One is Lies That Came True. It's not easy to find. I have found it on eBay, and that tells you about how it's developed. It has interesting pictures in it, and there's some interesting stories in there. Another one is called Lies That Came True, which tells you about Fort Myers, how it developed and then eventually moved over to Cape Coral. It tells about the families that lived here and some interesting facts in that. One thing that I did find kind of interesting is that one of the freshwater canals that we have here is called Lake Kennedy, which is this particular canal right here. I find it interesting. This has been named that name for at least 100 years. When the homesteaders back in the 1900s were here, this lake did exist then. Obviously not the way it looks now, it was developed and whatever. So it could even be that the Clusa Indians may have been familiar with this lake and the other things around it. But it's definitely an interesting area. The fact that we have water all the way around makes it an interesting place to be. I like to fish, so we go out and we fish fairly regularly. The Clusa, which is the river you see right here, is actually named after the Clusa Indians, and Hatchie actually means river. So when you're saying Clusa River, you're actually saying river twice. But it's named after Clusa Indians that would have lived here. But any evidence on living here has long gone, because as I said, the canals were dug out to give the landfill that we see today. So there's no real evidence of anybody living here even 100 years now. It's all completely gone. Another interesting thing, now I come to think about it too, is that we have a road that's called Burnstall Road, Old Burnstall Road. There was probably somewhere in the 1800s probably a store that locals could come and buy stuff from. The Indians would have done that as well, but obviously it was burnt down. So that's why it's called Old Burnstall Road. But where that was, we have absolutely no idea. There's no evidence of that. But there was one at one time. There was a trading post here that was burned down. It's probably somewhere in the 1800s. Maybe the Indians did it, we don't know. But that's why we get Burnstall on Old Burnstall Road. It's named after those. So even some of the roads to here do have a little bit of history behind them as well. This area is a great area to kayak, even get back in it. So I welcome you to Cape Coral. If you have any questions on it, if you want to learn more about the area, please reach out to me. But I hope you found this video interesting.